My name is Maria Gonzalez, and my topic for this project is Psychics and Profilers in Criminal Justice. Hello, everybody. As many of you may know, these practices have become increasingly popular in recent years, which shows that criminal minds bringing profiling to the forefront of public consciousness. However, psychics have also been around since the Middle Ages, and while they were not always viewed in a positive light, they have recently gained more mainstream attention. Today, I will be discussing the importance, the history, the use, and the ethical considerations surrounding the use of psychics and profilers. So, let's get started. A psychic is someone who claims to have extrasensory perceptions, or the ability to see beyond the physical realm. They may use various methods, such as tarot cards, crystal balls, or other tools to help them tap into the intuition I provide insight. There are many individuals who have reported experienced profound, life-changing readings from a psychic. Law enforcement agencies may also seek out psychics to gain insight into investigations. This may be seen as controversial by some, as the credibility of psychics is often questioned, though some believe that psychics have access to spiritual realms and can offer knowledge not attainable to traditional investigation tactics. Profiling is a technique used by law enforcement agencies to identify and apprehend criminals. It involves analyzing crime scenes and other evidence to create a profile of the perpetrator. Offender profiling involves analyzing the crime scene and victimology to identify patterns and characteristics of the offender. By using various methods, law enforcement can more effectively identify and apprehend criminals. The use of profiles in the criminal justice system is of utmost importance. Profilers are highly trained professionals who specialize in analyzing crime scenes, victim behavior, and other evidence to create a psychological profile of the perpetrator. This profile can help law enforcement officials narrow down the list of possible suspects and ultimately lead to the apprehension of a criminal. There are many different abilities that fall into the psychic category. This is just four of them. First, I chose clairvoyance, which is the ability to get information through an object, person, location, or physical event, through means other than the known sense. It is often referred to as extrasensory perception or ESP. Mediumship. Mediumship is the practice of purposely meditating communication between the spirit of the dead and living human beings. There are different types of mediumships, including trance, physical, and spiritual. Precognition is a psychic ability that enables an individual to see events that have not yet occurred. It is also known as prescience or future sight. This ability has been studied extensively by parapsychologists and is believed to be a rare and difficult ability to develop. Those who possess this ability can see events before they even happen, which can be helpful in avoiding danger or making important decisions. And lastly, telepathy. Telepathy is the purposely transmission of information through one person to another without using any known sensory channels or physical interactions. In psychic word, the term telepathy is a synonym for clairvoyance. Psychics have a long and fascinating history, dating back to ancient times when people sought guidance from oracles and diviners. Over centuries, the practice of psychic reading has evolved, with various methods and techniques being developed and refined. One of the earliest forms of psychic readings was the use of a crystal ball, which were believed to have power to reveal insight into the future. This practice was popularized by the ancient Greeks and Romans, who believed that God spoke through the crystal ball. Another popular form of psychic readings is tarot cards, which originated in the 15th century and have been used ever since. Tarot cards are a powerful tool for divination, providing insight into a person's past, present, and future. In modern eras, psychics have become increasingly popular, with many people seeking their guidance and insight. The history of psychics in criminal justice is also a fascinating topic that has been subject of much debate and controversy over the years. While some people believe that psychics can provide valuable insight into criminal investigations, others are skeptical of their abilities and question whether they should truly be trusted. Some of the controversies surrounding psychics is that there is no scientific evidence to support the existence of psychic abilities. Skeptics argue that psychics' powers such as telepathy and precognition are impossible because they violate the laws of physics. Scientific experiments have been unable to prove the existence of psychic powers. Skeptics argue that the supposed evidence for psychic powers is unreliable and can be explained by non-paranormal mechanisms, such as wishful thinking and selective memory. Some critics also claim that psychics use cold readings and other tricks to make it seem like they have special abilities. There is evidence to suggest that these claims are not without merit. For example, studies have shown that many of the techniques used by psychics are based on well-known psychological principles, such as Barnum effect and the confirmation bias. There have also been numerous cases of fraud in the psychic industry, with some psychics being exposed as fake. As a result, it may not be wise to rely on them for assistance in police investigations. Many people believe that psychic abilities are simply a result of coincidence or wishful thinking. However, there are those who argue that there is scientific evidence to support the existence of these abilities. One study conducted by the University of Edinburgh found that individuals who scored highly on a test of psychic abilities were more likely to have a certain gene. Other study found that individuals who believed in psychic abilities were more likely to have experienced a paranormal event. Despite these findings, the scientific community remains divided on the existence and validity of psychic abilities. The history of profiling. Profiling is also not a new concept. It actually has a long history, dating back to the early 1800s, when French magistrates began using physical characteristics to identify criminals. This early form of profiling was based on the belief that certain physical traits were indicative of criminal behavior, and it was used to help law enforcement officials apprehend suspects. But for us, profiling can be traced back to early 1900s. At that time, criminals were often caught through a process of elimination. This process was time-consuming and often ineffective. In the 1920s, a new method of profiling was developed. This method involved looking at the crime scene and analyzing the evidence. By doing this, investigators could get a better understanding of the criminal's behaviors and motives. This method was used successfully in the case of the Mad Bomber who terrorized New York City in the 1940s. By the 1970s, the FBI developed a new method of profiling that was based on psychological principles. This method was called criminal profiling, and it was used to track down serial killers and other violent criminals. Criminal profiling involves analyzing crime scenes, the victim behaviors, and the killer's behavior to create a profile of the suspect. Today, profiling is used in many different fields, including law enforcement, psychology, and even marketing. Development of profiling techniques. Profiling techniques have been a topic of interest for many years, and their development has been an ongoing process. Over time, these techniques have become more sophisticated and accurate, allowing law enforcement agencies to better identify and apprehend criminals. One of the earliest profiling techniques was developed in the 19th century by French police officer Alphonse Bertillon. Bertillon created a system of measurement that allowed officers to record physical characteristics of a suspect, including height, weight, and other distinguishing features. This system, known as anthropometry, and was used for many years before being replaced by more advanced techniques. In the 1970s, the FBI began developing a new profiling technique known as criminal investigative analysis. CIA. These techniques involve analyzing crime scenes and other evidence to create a profile of a suspect. The FBI Behavioral Science Unit was responsible for developing CIA, and it quickly became a popular method of investigating serial crimes. Today, profiling techniques have continued to evolve with new technologies such as DNA analysis and facial recognition software being integrated into this process. These advancements have made it easier than ever for law enforcement agencies to identify and apprehend criminals. There are several different types of profiling that can be used to help law enforcement officers solve crimes more effectively. Criminal profiling is a technique that is used to create a profile of a criminal based on their behavior, personality, and other characteristics. Geographic profiling. Geographical profiling is a type of profiling that involves analyzing the location of crime to try and identify patterns that may indicate the offender's whereabouts. Psychological profiling. This type of profiling involves analyzing offenders' mindsets and motivations to try and understand why they committed the crime. Some of the pros of using both psychics and profilers is that they can provide multiple perspectives in a case. Psychics can tap into the spiritual and supernatural realm, providing insight that can be difficult to obtain through traditional investigative methods. Meanwhile, profilers can analyze the behaviors and patterns of the suspects, helping to narrow down the list of potential suspects and provide a clear picture of the perpetrator. By combining the strength of both psychic and profilers, investigators can gain more complete understanding of the case and increase their chances of solving it. Additionally, new leads and information can be obtained that they may have missed otherwise. And some of the cons are that using both psychic and profilers can be unreliable and lead investigators down a false path. However, it is still important to consider all possible leads and avenues of investigating, including those suggested by psychics and profilers. But with crucial eye and a healthy dose of skepticism, also using both psychics and profilers can be quite expensive, as hiring two professionals can quickly add up the cost. And lastly, using both psychics and profilers in law enforcement can be a controversial topic, since psychics claim to have a supernatural ability to gather information, while profilers use psychological analysis to create a profile of a suspect. Both methods have their supporters and skeptics, and their effectiveness is still under debate. Cases where either psychics or profilers were used. The BTK killer, also known as Dennis Rader, was a serial killer who killed 10 people in Kansas between 1974 and 1991. He was known for taunting the police and media with letters and other communication methods, which is where psychics and profilers came in. They used their expertise to try and interpret the messages and provide insight into the killer's motives. Ultimately, it was the combination of the traditional police work and the combination of these experts that led to Rader's capture and conviction. Next, we have the Boston Strangler. Even though in this case psychics and profilers played an important role, they were not directly involved. Their techniques were used to help and catch the killer, who had brutally murdered 13 women in the Boston area between 1962 and 1964. At the time, the use of psychics and profiling techniques were not common in police work, but the authorities were desperate to solve the case. They enlisted the help of a psychic to try and locate the killer and used profiling to identify potential suspects, which led to the arrest and conviction of Albert DeSalvo, who confessed to being the Boston Strangler. However, up to this date, the contributions were controversial and not considerable reliable evidence. And lastly, the Lindbergh baby kidnapping case. This is one of my favorite ones, and it's also a fascinating topic that has been intrigued by many people over the years. The Lindbergh baby kidnapping case was one of the most high-profile crimes of the 20th century, and the fact that psychics were involved in this case only adds to the intrigue. It is interesting to know that profiling was not used in this case, as it occurred before the development of modern profiling techniques. However, even without modern profiling techniques, investigators were able to crack the case and bring the perpetrators to justice. The ethical concerns people have is that psychics can be influenced by their own beliefs and biases. This is a fascinating topic that has been studied extensively by scientists and researchers. It is important to understand that psychics are not immune to the same cognitive biases and errors that affect all humans. One of the most common biases can affect psychics is confirmation bias. This is a tendency to look for and interpret information in a way that confirms our pre-existing beliefs or hypotheses. For example, a psychic who believes in the power of astrology may interpret a client's horoscope in a way that supports their belief, even if the interpretation is not accurate or helpful. Another popular bias that can affect psychics is the Burnham effect. This is a tendency to accept vague or general statements as accurate descriptions of oneself. For example, a psychic may make a statement such as "you have a kind heart" or "you're searching for answers" that could apply to almost anyone. However, clients may interpret this statement as evidence of the psychic's accuracy and insight. Now, for the ethical concerns for profilers, is that profiling is a complex process that involves making assumptions and predictions about a person based on limited information. It is important to recognize that profilers can be influenced by their own beliefs and biases too, which can affect their ability to make accurate assessments. For example, many argue that it relies too heavily on stereotypes and assumptions about a certain group of people. This can lead to discrimination and prejudice against innocent individuals who happen to fit a certain profile. Because of this, profilers may miss important information or clues that don't fit their profile. These can lead to false accusations and missed opportunities to catch the real criminal. And lastly, the debate over the use of psychics and profilers in criminal justice is ongoing. Some people argue that they can be valuable tools in solving cases, while others believe that they are unreliable and a waste of resources. Ultimately, the decision to use them should be made on a case-by-case basis with careful consideration of their potential benefits and drawbacks. If you have any questions about the topic, you can write it down below my video in the Canvas board for the project, and I will try to get back to you as soon as possible. I am really enthusiastic about this topic in general, so I am more than glad to answer any of your questions. I used a lot of references for this project, so here are some of them.